Getting ready for it?
Here it comes.
Yeah, there we go. I can go in nerd mode now, as Angelo says. I'm in the nerd mode. But hey, welcome everybody. This is the Fall Line with Chaos and Company. I'm Dave Caper. I'm here with Angelo Ross, and we first want to definitely shout out to the friends of the podcast who help and support us, keep us going. Blizzard Technica. It's beginning of the season, so you're looking for skis or boots. Pretty darn good stuff. Angelo's got his behind him, and I got some behind me, man. I can't wait to get on them in about 10 days. And then also Nick's boot fitting. I know Nick and all the boot fitters across the East are cranking out right now. They're all complaining they get too much work. And in April, they'll be saying they wish they had work. But if you need your boots done, this is the time. Get out there, get it done, and go see Nick and George over at Nick's boot fitting. And we're starting to ski, so I don't know if there's going to be much rollerblading, but Scott's down in Mexico right now, so maybe he could use a pair of rollerblades down there. But thanks to Rollerblade and Miles for helping us out. And everybody out there, this is our first podcast that we've had that we're going down the snowboard route, which is cool. We've had some listeners asking us to do that. And we have an awesome person on tonight. We have Scott Anfang on, who is a 3-term national team member. Also the past coach of the team, which puts him 4 terms. And that went an extra year with the COVID year, I believe. And so we're psyched to have you on, Scott. Great you're here.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Angelo, we've got to start with Scott because I know you're the big skateboard guy, and I want to ask him because I know he skateboarded a lot as a kid. I've heard that. And in Minnesota, right?
Yep. Grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota. And started skating there.
Yeah. Sure. So did you have a lot of skate parks back then, or were you guys just going around on the pavement, or?
It was skate parks were not really a thing at that time. I mean, there was a few around, but none of them were close. And it was basically street skating, finding something cool, a curb, a bank, a stair set, whatever, and just making something fun out of it.
No, I think, Angelo, there was more to his
skate park.
Yeah, original skate. So I think there was more to your skateboarding when you were younger and even in your teen years than just skating around with your friends. Did you travel or do some competitions or something?
A little bit. We did. There was small stuff, and there was a skate park actually in Milwaukee called the Turf Club. We used to go down there and skate. That was the first time I really got into like big concrete transitions, stuff like that. So we made quite a few trips down there. And then there was a lot of little regional skate comp stuff and things all around the Twin Cities. And some of them were more jam format, and some of them were more, one at a time competition style. But I was involved in all those. And those were the days that Powell Peralta and all the other companies were doing tours, and they would set up and their pros would come, and you could go, they would have a little contest, and the top skaters from the area would go get and be in the demo with the pros. So I got to do a little bit of that, which was quite cool.
Oh, nice. Angelo, did you do any of that when you were younger?
That sounds pretty much identical to my my introduction to the skateboard world. And I remember, and it was a real similar setup because we were in a tiny little blue collar town about 40 minutes away from Pittsburgh. And there were a couple like proper skateboard parks as you head into Pittsburgh, North Versailles, and then Shady Skates in Pittsburgh was a real big one. But Pal Peralta, that tour came through Shady Skates, and I remember going there. We drove down, so we were 16 or 17, and Tony Hawk was there, and we saw him do we called him McTwists, and now it's a 540. We saw him do a McTwist on this quarter pipe. It had to be 6 feet tall with about 4 feet of transition. It was like basically a wall with a kink at the bottom. And that dude did a 540 on that thing indoor. It was insane. But yeah, like same setup, curbs, steps, little ledges. Rough concrete. Yeah. Big boards, the whole bit.
Yeah. And it was the best. It was so fun. Like what I look back at those days sometimes, and it's like the friends that I made, the shaping of who you are as a person and all that. And there was a lot of opportunities to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. So there was navigating life stuff through all that as well. But it was great. I saw this quote the other day. It was somebody sent it to me. It was Ian McKay from Fugazi. Mm-hmm. He had a little interview, and he was talking about skating when he was a kid, and he was like, "It's not a hobby. It's not a sport. What it was to me was the way that it altered the way I viewed life," or something like that. And it was something I really connected with. And he was talking about that's what skateboarding did. And then I kept thinking, that's me, because I would run my fingers on ledges and like slide them like I had a skateboard on, like just walking around. I would see stuff and I would just play with it with my hands, or view it and eye it to think I wanted to go, what could I do on that on a skateboard, you know? And that obviously transitioned into snowboarding as well, for free riding and looking at the mountain and getting lines and how to hit stuff. I can contribute a lot of that to that old skate, is for sure.
Yeah. It teaches you how to see things as opportunities instead of obstacles, and like things that are barriers in society, like curbs and walls and rails, are barriers in most circumstances, but in skateboarding they're opportunities to be creative. And it's you know, everybody's upbringing shapes the way they think. So I sometimes when I hear skateboarders say that, or when I say it, I don't want to come off like it's better than anything else, but like it's just a little bit different, you know, because you learn about opportunity. And I was just upstairs thinking about skateboarding, because I knew it would come up, and like like falling, just like how many, just think about this for a second. I'd like to hear your answers. Like, how many times in a person's life, in a normal person's life, like let's say after they're 18, how many times in someone's life do you think they fall down?
Right. Very, very few. And when it happens, it's usually terrible. It ends terribly.
Right. So like when you're 17, you fall, it's okay. But like I'm 51 now and I'm falling and I'm like, this is not good. You know, you're probably falling very well. I always say and I say this in snowboarding, there's a difference between a fall and a slam. And a fall is when you're doing something that you're supposed to be doing and you kind of slip and go to the ground. That's a fall. Falls are okay. Yeah.
Slams at 51 are not okay. And it's typically when you're doing something, whether it's experience wise, skill wise, that you shouldn't even be trying. That's when you slam.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, Angelo has that right in his back here. That's what I was going to ask you. Like, I mean, Angelo has his little ramp right in the back. He's still skateboarding now. I mean, how much are you on the skateboard now? And do you have like your own skateboard ramp in the backyard at your place?
I personally don't have a skate ramp in my yard, but I still do skate. I get on it and go. Not as much as I'd like to anymore. I was involved with getting a skate park designed and built through our city council and Steamboat. And when that process was happening, I was skating a lot more. I still go down there and skate. We've got the Steamboat Springs Winter Sports Club here in town, and they have a skateboard program. And I've done a bunch of sessions with the kids and coaching with taking the coaches out and working with them to help create different progressions and different things for different abilities. And it's taking what I've learned from my snowboard education and bringing it into the skateboard world has really brought a lot of full circle in a lot of the things we do for me.
That's cool. And it's interesting. I heard a story, and we'll see if it's true. I heard a story about how you saw your first snowboard when you were a kid. You were like 11 or something, we're in that age, and saw your first snowboard.
Yeah. There's a group of guys I used to skate with there. Angelo, you might be able to comment on this too. When you get your little crew of skateboarders, it's like age doesn't matter. There's older kids, younger kids, because you're all skateboarders and you're all together. So a lot of my friends were older and they were starting to drive, and I was still one of the younger ones, but I would be able to go along because for whatever reason I was good enough to play with the big guys or something. I don't know what it was, but it was fun. And these guys pulled up and somebody pulled a snowboard out of their trunk, and I'd seen it on TV, but I'd never like touched one or played with it. And we looked at it and it was cool. And then right away I was like, I got to get one of those. And it was game on to saving money and trying to figure out how to not break my skateboard decks. So a little money, invest in a snowboard. Didn't even try it, and I knew I wanted one.
Yeah. Before we hopped on the call, Scott noticed one of the decks I have hanging behind me, this Vision Mark Gonzalez, and I bought that. I think it was 1985. Because my friend Matt had one. So I had to get one. And Matt somehow ended up with a Burton Woody. And there was a 145 Burton Woody. And that was like the first snowboard that any of us owned. So I wanted to get one, right? Like I had to get a snowboard because Matt had one. And we had this great friend, Joe Santi, who owned a skate shop in the town next to us. And he would give us little odd jobs in the shop and then give us product and stuff for working instead of money, because he was just a broke kid too. But I walked in the shop one day and there was an avalanche kick hanging on the wall, and it was a white snowboard, had pink graphic, and it had twin tip. And if I'm not mistaken, it's the first board that was a twin tip, unless maybe Kemper had one before that. But I had to get it, so I bought this snowboard. It was expensive. And then we didn't know what to do with them, and you weren't allowed to ride at any of the resorts. So Matt had this hill in his yard, and we'd get 3 inches of snow, and we'd just straight line this hill in his yard. It wasn't even enough snow to really turn. And then in the summer, we'd ride them on slag heaps at these defunct coal mines. You could ride it down there. But yeah, it was crazy. We had them, but we weren't allowed to use them.
There's a similar story. We had a guy that was a little bit older than us that opened a skate shop, and it was Pat's skate shop right on University Avenue, and he called his distributors and all this stuff, and the two snowboards he could get through his distribution network were either a barfoot or an avalanche. And I ended up buying the avalanche kick 165 after watching all the Damian Saunders videos, Riders on the Storm, and all the different ones. And it's so funny because there was no hole patterns or inserts. It was T-bolt, or you either had to put a T-bolt through it or you'd use wood screws, and you were constantly pulling them out and breaking them because you were crashing. So it was like Swiss cheese on the top of your board, and you were trying to figure out where you could put your binding and put a screw in there was good enough wood to ride for a couple more runs. And they weren't cheap, and you're just destroying it because we're like, I got to get another run. We got to figure this out. And eventually you just started T-bolting them and doing stuff like that. And one kick, I still have old pictures riding that board, which is actually quite cool.
That's awesome.
And similar, it was straight line. We would no resorts. Nobody would let us go. And we used to climb this fence into a golf course, and we just go in, and there was a few times we actually brought our skateboard launch ramps and covered them in snow. So we just had, and it wasn't about turning. It wasn't about it was about standing on the board, going fast enough so you could hit that jump and catch some air. Yeah. That's all it was. It's quite funny.
Yeah, I had heard that story. You were on the golf course, and you were using the bunkers too. You're using the bunkers for little quarter pipes and stuff.
Yeah, eventually we figured out the jump here. You could land in the sand trap, and then it would almost be like a transition landing, and then there'd be another jump or like a berm to do a slash or something. Mm-hmm. So we were creating little snowboard parks, because it's just what we had, and it was fun. And it goes back to that skating thing, seeing things as an obstacle or whatever it is, and figuring out what to do with it and how to play with it and have fun with it.
How long did you ride? Oh, go ahead, Angelo.
Well, it's just a short story. When I was like a junior in high school, there was this kid named Scott in my high school, and he had a snowboard too. And one day we were like talking at school, and we're like, bring your snowboard tomorrow and we'll go up to the resort and hike the hill and ride down. So we brought our snowboards to school, and we go up after school to Hidden Valley Resort, and I still am, involved with Hidden Valley. And we parked the car, like kind of hid it in a parking space, and we walk up through the woods, like clear up to the top of the hill, and we snowboard down. And we didn't know what we're doing. We probably fell like 75 times. But by the time we get to the bottom, there's like 4 ski patrollers standing there, and they're looking at us, and they look at the boards, and they look at us and look at the boards. And they said, what are those things? So these are snowboards. They were like, get the hell out of here. And they just put us back in our car and made us leave. But like, they could have get like theft of services and trespassing and all that nonsense. They just couldn't compute what we were standing on. So they just threw us out.
And yeah, I mean, this is the thing, like Angelo, you did that, and you weren't riding a board, and you were such a big skateboard guy. And, I think that's probably why you skied so much. But Scott, how long did you ride on the golf course before you could actually get on a chairlift? Like, who let you in first?
We did that for probably 1 or 2 seasons, and then we started to fade. There was a couple resorts, and because there was a few resorts that were a little farther, and they was like, oh, on Wednesdays you can snowboard there. So it'd be like, well, I guess we're skipping school Wednesday to go snowboarding because it's the only day we can go. So it's, there'd be like a random that you could go one day a week. And then it was like, then it was a couple days, and then it was Monday through Friday, but not weekends. And then it was only at night, or, it was like constantly changing, but it was growing and it was evolving. And then eventually it was allowed. There was, handful of resorts around us, and I would, Minnesota resorts, Midwest, they're more hills than resorts, but it was what we had, and it was awesome, man. Loved it.
So what else did you do as a youngster and coming through high school and that for sports? Were there other sports, or was it just the skateboarding and out on the golf course?
No, it was I played other sports growing up. I did the normal baseball, like t-ball, baseball route. And then once it got to where it was like not, I guess once it got competitive and you had to try out and do all these things, it wasn't just a pay to play, lose an interest in team sports. Played though. I was a big hockey player. I played all the way high school, a little bit of college hockey, and then didn't do much hockey playing. And then when I started doing seasons in New Zealand, I picked up hockey again and playing down there, simply because it could get amazing ice time. It would be like, you mean I can get on the ice 3 nights a week and all my games are going to be between 5 and 8 o'clock p.m.? And they're like, yeah, that's when we play. And that's unheard of in the States. Yeah. If you're in like an old men's league you're playing at crazy hours, getting on the ice at 11 o'clock at night because that's when you can get on the ice. So I got back into hockey down there. One, I wanted to play. 2, just because of the time slots we could get were amazing.
That's cool. And you're out west now, and there was kind of a trip, I think, that you went to somewhere out west that kind of really put you on a path. I think Jackson Hole has kind of some meaning to you.
Oh yeah. It was like I was saying before, with the skater group that you're in, and it doesn't matter what age, like there's a lot of different ages. I think I was sophomore or maybe a junior in high school, and quite a few friends were in college already, and they were going to the University of Minnesota, and there was a University of Minnesota ski club trip to Jackson Hole. And somehow I got my parents convinced that it was a good idea that I go. I got in with the university people to somehow get my paperwork forged that I was a student to go, and ended up going on this big coach driving from the University of Minnesota right to Jackson Hole, and I was on that avalanche kick, and that's when I was on that trip at a shop in Jackson, because every day the first 2 days my days were ended short because my bindings would rip off the board, and we just went in and got them T-bolted. And how do you want to stand? Because you're not going to be able to change them anymore. Boom, put them on there and locked them in.
Man, and it's amazing that the travel you had in terms of like starting on the golf course, and your skateboarding background is awesome to work right into it. But I mean, it was definitely, that passion was early. You were going to do anything you had to do, or any sacrifice, and sit on a bus for 20 hours, and you were going to go snowboard. But then Jackson Hole really kind of put it in there that you wanted to ride and snowboard a lot.
When I left that trip, I was like, I'm moving. I'm figuring out how to make it work and get somewhere and start snowboarding as a regular. And getting out of Minnesota and getting into the some of the bigger resorts, and I was ready to go. That Jackson trip was like you said, it was a big eye opener for me. I saw things I'd never seen before in terms of terrain, like the whole après scene, the whole ski town life. I met some awesome people, and that exposed me to that whole part of the industry. And I was like, wow, this is amazing, and I want to be a part of it for sure.
And I remember a lot of stuff I looked at. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I remember calling my mom, and maybe this wasn't the smartest thing to say as a junior in high school, but it was like, I was like, man, this is amazing. You can snowboard all day, you can have a couple beers, and you can still get 8 hours of sleep. Like, it's the whole après thing. And I don't know. It was good.
And I mean, you've worked really hard. I know. I mean, when I look at your stats and team member and all that, but you didn't have like a plan of like, I'm going to the national team, I'm going to do this. It was really an exploration. You explored kind of the snowboard thing and the mountains and the world. It's been kind of how things revolved. It didn't seem, and I could be wrong, you can tell us, I mean, it didn't seem like you had an exact plan. It was really evolved as you were going through different parts of your life.
I was a snowboarder who wanted to snowboard, and that led me into teaching. And that the teaching thing was, it was more of how do you say this? It was just I needed a pass. I wanted to get out and go. And my roommate at the time, actually, you guys might connect with this, but remember back in the tryouts, and they made you pay to go to the tryout?
No, I remember those. I remember a lot of people saying that you had to pay to go to a tryout or resort to see if you could get hired to be part of the ski school.
Yeah, it's exactly what it was. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I needed a pass, and I knew I wanted to be at a resort. I was living with a friend of mine from Minnesota. We were in employee housing, so I knew I had to get a job on that was through the mountain. And I saw this thing for this tryout, and there was a couple guys that I've been riding with a little bit on the mountain, and they said, you should try out for this. I was like, I don't know if I want to. And I didn't have any money at the time, and my roommate actually borrowed me the money to pay for the tryout. And and I got on, and it was awesome. Like it probably took me a year before I really, really started enjoying teaching. Like, I liked it, but I didn't love it. And about a year, it just clicked. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, I love, like, the transition from loving snowboarding to loving teaching snowboarding happened about a year in to my working for the resort as an instructor.
And you've been at Steamboat pretty much the whole time. For the Western and the winters here you spent in the U.S. And how did you decide on Steamboat?
So we had this little, I don't know, call it a scheme, a model, whatever, but we had three things that we were kind of pricing out and looking at, and it was a gallon of milk, a gallon of gas, and how much a rent was on a 2-bedroom apartment or condo. And we did it in Vail, we did it in a few other resorts in Colorado, and we were actually driving up to Jackson, and we came through Steamboat, and we did it there, and we actually never made it up to Jackson on that trip, and we just settled in right there. And that's where the Steamboat connection and the Steamboat story started.
True scientific way, Angelo.
I'd be curious. I'd be curious now to go back and do the gallon of milk, gallon of gas, and rent test and see where all the resorts fall into place.
That's right. But now you can crash with Scholing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can drink his milk.
Oh God, that is so awesome. And you didn't jump into the Aussie world and get certified right away. It was a couple of years, a year or two or so after you were teaching.
Yep. And that's, I mean, like I was saying before, I was living in employee housing. I knew I needed a job on the mountain. Did the tryout, got the job. It was mainly for the pass and for the housing. And then, like I said, a year or so into it, I was like, man, I really like teaching. And that's when I started looking into certification and things like that. Because that's when I was like, man, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right, and I'm going to get involved and go for it. And so yeah, it was, I think my second season midway through is when I did my level 1. And then the following season after that, I did my level 2, and I attempted my 3 at the end of the season and got my ride and my teach, but I was unsuccessful in my movement analysis. So I did my 2 and pretty much knocked out my 2 and 3 in one season, which was my 3rd or 4th season teaching.
Wow. That's cool. And did you have a lot of training at Steamboat at that time when you were first starting? Was there a lot of certified pros, or was there any ed staff from Aussie on the staff?
Yeah, we had certified people, and we had a couple examiners on staff, and we had a training. We had training that would go out every morning before the mountain. You could go up an hour early before the mountain. I attended quite a few of those, and it was inspiring to see these guys and girls that were, knew what they were doing and teaching at a much, much higher level. And so there was definitely access to some of that work in Steamboat.
Yeah. And you stayed at Steamboat, so there's got to be a pretty good vibe to stay as long as you have and keep riding there.
Oh yeah, it's a great place to work because there's a variety of lessons. A lot of times I hear people that leave instructing, they'll say they leave because all they do is beginners over and over and over, and they get burnt out on it or something. And then I hear other guys that are at resorts that are, man, they're, I don't know. I the balance of work, I'll get some high end lessons. I'll do some beginners. I'll do some training. And again, that took a long time for me to work into those positions, but it's a great, and it's a great variety, and the guests are awesome. The mountain's good. The snow's good. I really enjoy it. And that's partly why I never really moved on from there. Now I do ride at other places a lot, and I do enjoy riding other places and seeing other things, but it's a great place to kind of call home and walk into the, it's always fun to walk into that locker room and see people and be there. 'Cause when you're on the team, you're traveling a lot and you're doing things, but it's a great place to come home to.
Yeah, because it seems, looking at your background and all the years and the journeys, you've enjoyed the travel and across the international zones to ride elsewhere and with other teams from other countries. But you've definitely kept that home. That home with Steamboat is kind of the rock. And yep. When I look, because even when you're in New Zealand, and hopefully we'll talk about it in a little bit, you've been at a couple of resorts in New Zealand, but here in the US, it's Steamboat, Steamboat, Steamboat.
Yeah, and like I said, I think part of that is having the access through ASI and team friend networks of getting out of Steamboat and playing and having fun. And I remember my first couple seasons, like I never left Steamboat. Like it was, you were just there and that's what you did. And then, getting to go to do an ASI exam at a different mountain, that was like a big trip. You're like, yeah, I'm going to leave town and go somewhere. And then the trips got bigger and they expanded farther and they got more complicated and more, bigger days, longer lengths of time, and for different reasons. And next thing you know, that you have that Steamboat home, you come back to it, and you go and do your other things. But I think a lot of the longevity in teaching I can contribute to the variety of places that I've ridden and people I've ridden with, and the different ways to be involved in the industry, not just teaching day in, day in, day in. But when I do get the opportunity to go back and teach, love it, Yeah. Seeing somebody get up and do it and get hooked is amazing.
Yeah. And you talked about the bump in the roads. I mean, you had one at your level 3, and I know you came back from that right away the next season and finished it up.
That would have been my first season in New Zealand. Like it was a late spring event, and my visa and my job was pending on me having my level 3. So when I found I was unsuccessful, I thought I crushed my hopes of going to New Zealand, and because I didn't have the right qualifications. But then I did an interview, and they said they would still hire me and all this and that. So it went from a blow to being okay.
Yeah. and how was
that was the first season in New Zealand?
Yeah, because that was kind of that was the start right there for your kind of endless winters for a while. But and yep. how did your, before we go to that, how did your process through the journey of the AASI Ed staff? I don't know, because I know each of our regions here in the country has a little different as we move into Ed staff, what levels you go to, and how was that? Was that a real smooth? Did you have any bumps?
Your examiner status, it wasn't like, it was more and clinicking and being brought along, and then when they felt like, hey, this guy enough or this girl's good enough, you kind of got the nod, and then you were off running your own events. But you definitely had to put some time into it to get the nod. But it wasn't like a 3-day event that happens once a year that is a make or break exam type environment. So I went through that process and got in, and then you start at the bottom again, and then you're working your way through. It's
but it's interesting, Angelo, because it goes back to, you were talking about the skateboarding and like the curbs and the walls and all that stuff. You don't really look at them as obstacles. It's like, hey, talk, Scott, it's really neat. It's like, well, it wasn't really, I got this. I thought it was really bad, but then I was able to overcome. And, it's a real positive attitude of like, okay, this is going on, so what do I do with it? And it's pretty neat because it's a pretty amazing career to see. I mean, we haven't even talked about New Zealand yet, but in your first team tryouts, how was that for the team tryouts? Was the first time the ticket, or?
No. And like you said, what were the bumps and the hurdles? And I don't view this as a bump or a hurdle. I look at it, like you said, an obstacle which created a growth opportunity. But I was getting involved with the Rocky Mountain division. I just led a handful of exams, and there was a few more senior examiners that were talking about going to this. We're going to go try out for the national team. And I was like, well, what's the team? I really didn't even know what all that was about. And I started hearing more about it. And I went to a tryout. It was the 2000 tryout in Snowboard, Utah, I believe was the one. And I really didn't know what I was getting involved in. And I met some incredible people. I saw some incredible riding, and it was amazing to ride in a group of high of caliber of individuals, not only in riding ability, but in knowledge and I don't know, it was amazing. And I remember when that team was announced, I was a little bummed that I didn't make it, but I knew I wasn't ready to make it because I didn't know what I was getting involved in. But it did make me go, I have 4 years to get ready for the next tryout. and I know what I'm trying to do now. I know what I'm getting involved with. And then I came back, was it 2008? No, it was 2004. And that was another snowbird tryout. And that was the year that I first made the team.
That's awesome. And what a
very cool
trip. I mean, three terms, which was a lot of the bulk of, because the learning connection model hadn't started, wasn't being looked at. It was really through the process you were on the snowboard team when everyone started and the teams were looking at that. And it must be pretty rewarding after 3 terms as on the team. And then the coach that when you're, kind of taking it, coming off the team, but going, wow, what a legacy to be part of with the teams. That must've been pretty cool.
It's very cool. And the inner ski in Ushuaia, we were trying to figure out what we were going to present as we wanted to do. And we were working with, it was when Lane Clegg was the coach, and I was on the team, and Hargraves and Seth and Tony, and like, we were all trying to figure out what we would bring. And it was pretty obvious to us. We were like, there's something going on in our education system where people have the answers, but the answers are too stock. They're not personalized. It's like the answer, or if they're doing this exercise, this is what you do next. It was very linear and very do this, then do that, then do that. And it was the same, like, kind of one size fits all. We were like, why? The answer is not wrong, but there's a million other things you could have said, or that would have made it better for that individual. And that's when we really started talking about some people skill stuff. And we didn't call it people skills. And what we actually presented in Ushuaia was this, we created this, we did these, we were talking about assessing a student, and then approaching a student, and then engaging the student. So that was kind of and brought through when we snowboarded with, they were on snow clinics. So we were riding with people, and we did different approaches and we were like, how, in my eyes, and I don't know what other, I don't remember exactly what the Alpine team brought that year as their focus, but that was the start of like a connection or people piece for the snowboard team. And then when all the teams were getting together and thinking about where do we go with this, what's next, it just kind of morphed and evolved. I'm super proud of the learning connection. It's something that can be used at all levels, and what we can do with that in terms of personal development, giving feedback, organizing clinics for different people. It's a very versatile piece that you can use. And once you really, truly understand it, and you're not just like, oh, it's that triangle thing and da 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 da. Once you get on that, it's a really awesome, useful piece to develop personally and to give feedback. I love it for the feedback piece of it.
Yeah. And all this stuff you've done in the U.S. and been a part of, and to watch our national teams from when you started, it was probably each discipline was kind of in their little stovepipe, and you did your thing. And then by the time you were done with the 4 terms, it's like, it was really the teams were working together and came up with this thing that are teaching and people skills in the learning connection model, the same across all disciplines. And just some of our technical components are different because the apparatus we're on, but that must have been a pretty big evolution for you as a team member and as a coach through that time.
And you were spot on with the disciplines in isolation there, because there was not a lot of commingling and different things. I mean, you were all teammates. You'd have dinner together, have a beer, something like that. But when it came time to put your head down and work, it was like in silos, and to see it get to the point where we're sharing ideas, there's a lot of strength in that. It's very good. And it's really important to snowboarding too. Not, we don't want to lose our identity through all that as well. But I think that it's being done in a way that we can still be snowboarders, but we are all talking a lot of the same game and a lot of the same language, and it is very applicable all around. So it's
And Angelo, when it comes to his comment, Scott's about they don't want to lose their identity. I would say Angelo is challenging us in Alpine to lose some of our identity, to be a little more free and exploratory. Here he comes.
I think it's evident which way the flow is going. Like the style flow, the attitude flow is not moving from ski world to snowboard. It's moving from snowboard to ski. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I don't know
if it were going from ski to snowboard, you guys would all be wearing stretch pants on your snowboards, and that's just not what's happening. Skiing has adopted style. It's adopted slope style. Just terrain park. It's moving in that direction. So I think the identity crisis.
There's challenges with that for sure, though. There's definitely some challenges, and like you talk about bumps in the road, those are probably the bumps in the road that have been the hardest. Is how long it's taken to, that first team when I was the coach, and I was celebrating with the guys and the snowboard team, and I was being totally genuine, and this isn't a diss to any of the other snowboard coaches, and it's not. It was genuine to my guys. I said, man, I feel like we made it to the adult table on this team. Like, we are involved in the conversations. We're not sitting at the kids' table anymore. And I congratulated them on that, because when we got into the start of the learning connection model, we split up our team and we put certain people on certain task force with people and teaching and connection. And it was the first time snowboarders sit in a room together. We left and went into other rooms. And then after our times and our talks, we would come back to our room. What's going on in that group? What's going on in that group? And that's when we were talking about the snowboard team stuff. And like I said, I felt like that was the first time in all those years that it was like Thanksgiving dinner, getting invited to the adult table and not sitting in the little table. Mm-hmm. We're snowboarders standing next to skiers presenting on the big stage, which was awesome to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to love that, Angelo.
I think we should all love it,
Yeah, it's cool that we hear it. You get the marketing thing, and we hear it from a lot of the people. Jeb talks about it, but it's really becoming real. It is one team. It's not that just the saying it's one team. It's really that all the disciplines are working together, which is good.
Hope it stays that way.
Yeah,
and meshes more and more.
Well, I think even as an alumni, you'll still probably have some involvement of things. So you'll probably be one of the people trying to make sure that happens.
I hope so. I hope I'm involved. I want to be.
Yeah, and that's a question before, because I do want to talk a little bit about your New Zealand time, because I think people will love that. The snowboard crews around the U.S. will. Is when you look at your time on the team, you're now off the team in terms of your alumni now, and stepped down from being the coach. What's it like? Is it what are the things you miss? What are the things that you've had some more time to do that you like that extra time? Or, what's it like life as an alumni off the team?
It's you definitely miss it. You're like, oh, I should be at training right now, or I should be looking at what gear I'm going to order, and like there's things that you definitely you miss, but then you're also like, oh, I've got this free time and I've always been wanting to do this or do that. So I'm definitely like this trip I'm on right now. There's no way I could get away at this time of the year before, because it was team training and then all the resort stuff, and you're doing some division stuff, and there was just so much going on. And for me to get away for 2 weeks right before the ski season was incredible. So this was an amazing good thing to be able to do. And, I had my daughters here and my partner, Christina, and we just went surfing every day, and to see all three of them up on a wave cruising in towards the beach, you're just like, you just lay back and smile and you really enjoy it, take it in. And, I'm looking forward to doing more stuff like that and just having, I'm not leaving the ski industry or teaching. I just don't have the team title, and some of that just relieves a little stress on your shoulders and opens new doors. Like I'm going to be doing a lot more work. I've worked with this company called Mint Tours, leading snowboard guides, snowboard trips. I'm going to be doing some more trips with those guys because I have more availability now. So it's just being able to shift and move in different directions, having that more freedom to do it because you have the time to do it.
Yeah. And you made a shift back when, which we've kind of passed. We talked about your U.S. time and the team and that, but during this time, you've also been going to New Zealand quite a bit. You had quite a few years in a row. I guess there was one or two breaks for a few years here and there, but pretty much some endless winters for you for quite a few years.
I did a stretch of, I think it was 9 or 10 years where I did Colorado, Queenstown, back and forth, and then I stopped for about 8 years, and then I went back for another 6 or 7 year stretch, and actually got very lucky. My partner Christina was in grad school. We're finishing up the season in New Zealand, and she said, "Hey, we should skip a season because I want to focus on school." Da 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 da. And I was like supportive of that, and I was like, "Okay." So we got out of our lease, sold our cars, made, settled on not going back to New Zealand the following summer. And that was the season COVID hit. And we wouldn't have been able to go back if we would have wanted to either, because they were shut down. Was it 2 or 3 seasons? The borders were shut down. Couldn't work over there. Couldn't do anything. And now they're getting back into it. But so we just happened to make some decisions and dodge that bullet and not have all of our eggs in that basket and then have it crushed or taken away. And then we started having summers and really got back into some things I haven't done for a while, skated a little more, got on my bike a lot, spent some time in the river. We got the raft back out and paddleboarding and just all these things that I would get small doses of, but not a full summer of. And those all came, I was able to bring those back and get that going again, which was, I enjoyed. As bad as it was when COVID with all the crap we had to deal with in our lives, I had a great time. Like I enjoyed my summer and getting out and doing stuff. It was good.
It's another one, Angelo, making the best of what he's got, man. It's just, these aren't walls. They're just kind of little obstacles. How can I overcome these things? I'm going to have some fun. And when you were in New Zealand, it wasn't just, hey, I'm going to New Zealand and going to ride and teach. I mean, you went through the certifications there. And then as far as I know, that wasn't good enough. It's like, I'm going to, become part of the ed staff in New Zealand to do certifications and train and be an examiner there. Yes.
Yep. I went through the certification process there and then went through the examiner. They had somewhat of a tryout system at that time and got invited to that. And actually, one of the big motivations for that is it's a little bit different in the States than it is down there in terms of how you get involved in teaching. Here in the States, you go to a school, you get involved, you do a hiring clinic, they train you, you get a job, then you join the PSIA-AASI, then you get certified. Down there, you basically a lot of times you go to training, you pay to go to a training company, you train, then you get certified, then you apply for a job at a ski resort. So it's a little bit different pathway. And there's a lot of jobs down there where you just would run these multi-week programs where you would work with potential instructors that are training for their exams. So I did a lot of that down there, where I would work 11 weeks with the same group of people. And the goal was for them to sit their exam and pass their exam so they could get a job teaching the following year. So that was one of the motivating things to get involved with the system down there, was to get, if I got to the examiner status, I would be more likely to get a better job with a training program and working a system like that. So that was one of the drivers for that. And I actually worked with a program down there called WinTech. It was when this was in the what would have been the 2000s, the early 2000s, and Japan was just blowing up with snowboarding. The snowboard scene in Japan was crazy, and WinTech was a Japanese company that was bringing Japanese snowboarders to New Zealand, and then we would run camps for them. We did freestyle camps, border cross camps, and free ride camps, and they offered an instruction camp, and I would work with 4 or 5 Japanese. They would be learning English and learning to snowboarding at the same time. So there would be they'd go to the classroom in the morning, and then I would spend the afternoon with them on the hill, and I'd get notes from the teacher, and there would sit the English teacher, and they'd be like, "Oh, we worked on colors today," or something. And then I would try to incorporate colors into the lesson, so that as we're teaching them how to teach snowboarding, we're reinforcing their English skills. And it was amazing to watch these guys, because some of them went from their level 1 all the way to their level 2 in like a 12-week course, learning English and how to teach, which I was baffled and amazed. But it was such a different way to teach. We would do lots of drawings, and we had to get through language barriers, and we had to do all this. I really enjoyed it, and it made it very entertaining and fun for me to watch these guys learn and grow and develop, and on all levels.
Scott, I was going to ask you to talk a little bit about similarities and differences with American and American students and students from New Zealand. But do you think you could talk about that and throw in your experience with the Japanese students as well? Like, what do you find they all have in common, and what's a little bit different with them?
Well, I think the user that goes to the ski resort in New Zealand as a whole, not to stereotype it as one thing, but a lot of people just want to come, and it's there's so much to do in New Zealand, especially in Queenstown, that the resorts are competing as a source of entertainment. So because there's jet boating, rafting, skydiving, like all these things, and you're there for a week, and one of the things that you do on that week is you spend a day at a mountain and you go snowboarding or skiing. And so you get a lot of people that maybe didn't know they wanted to be snowboarders, that are just trying it, and all of a sudden they come back a second day and whatever. And it's a different audience there, because I feel like, especially in Steamboat or the bigger destination type resorts, when people come, they already know that they're skiers or snowboarders, or, they just spent a lot of money to go on a vacation. They didn't spend a lot of money to just see what it's like to ski or snowboard. They're already committed. And in New Zealand, they're going up to the mountain for a lot of time. It's amazing how many students I had in New Zealand, after you start talking to them, that are literally saying, "This is the first time I've ever seen snow. I've never touched it before. I've never seen it." And so there's this whole new experience that you get to share with them that is very, very different. I see a lot more of that in New Zealand than I do in the States, in terms of your general user, general person that's at the resort. That's one thing with the guest. And then in terms of, certifications and things like that, I feel like we're all, good snowboarding is good snowboarding. We may have different language or different terminology, but it's very, that part's pretty much similar. Mm-hmm. Progressions, things like that, very similar. Conditions, snow conditions can be pretty different there. Some of the iciest days I've ever had were down there, but some of the soft, lots of great days down there as well. Mm-hmm. I think we get spoiled, especially in Steamboat or in Colorado, where we have this scale where we're like, oh, it's kind of icy today, it's kind of crappy, but that scale is on a different level in different areas, different regions. I know even in the US from East Coast to West Coast, there's some experience in that as well.
Yeah, we have different levels of firm out here in the East. Not really soft, just different levels of firm.
An ice rating system.
Yeah, we go from real World Cup to kind of just icy, but then we have the real World Cup conditions. That's coming into Killington now.
That just reminded something really funny I heard this last winter. We were talking about customers and guests at the resort, and I was on a shuttle bus, I think, from the parking lot to the base area or something, and I was eavesdropping a little bit on the guys in front of me just because they were a little bit older guys carrying snowboards, and I was kind of wonder what these guys are chatting about, and they were having a conversation, and it was a scaling system that we were just talking about, but on a whole nother level that I've never heard of before. They were comparing grooming at resorts to golf courses. They were like, oh man, I rode at this resort and the grooming was like playing a real shitty public course. And then somebody else, the other guy was like, oh, I was at this other resort and it was like playing Augusta, man. It was perfect. And da 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 da. And I'm not a golfer, but I thought that was a very interesting scaling system.
Oh, that is funny. So you've been across the world and in different places to ride. Is the snowboard culture, or do you see some different aspects in different parts of the world that you've traveled to?
There's definitely some different aspects and some different things, but I always think it's kind of funny that we travel all over the world, and when I say we, snowboarders and different individuals that are in the industry and into snow sports, you travel so far and you go to a destination that you feel at home with. It's like going through the big cities and the airports and the shuttles and all that stuff is part of the adventure. And then you get this sigh of relief when you see a chairlift or a bar at the bottom of a run. You're like, hey, I made it. I'm at home now. Even though you're on the other side of the world, you're home. Yeah. And part of that is the culture, the people, the surroundings, so that part of it stays very much the same. And I will say this, I've been doing some work in China over the years. And one of the things that is fascinating over there is they don't always have the best snow conditions. They don't always have the best resorts. But man, those guys are eager for information and they are excited for it. Sometimes you get in a PSIA clinic and it's a good snow day and you're like, hey guys, we got to do these level 1 demos because it's part of the exam. We won't spend a lot of time on it, but I at least got to do it once so I can mark you off on it. And you can just see people are going through the motions because they kind of have to. And you're going, you have that same conversation in China and those guys are stoked. Oh, can we do it again? Let's try. Give me some feedback on my J turn. You're like, you don't hear that at a clinic in the States. They're very, very into it, and they want to learn and they want the information, and it's very cool. And that's so excited to get out and learn and ride and try different things.
No, pretty. Go ahead, Angelo.
There's a level of energy and a buzz you get from that, being in front of that group. You know, when you have a group that's anything you do is exciting and they want more. It's there's something really awesome about being in front of a group like that.
It's pretty easy to tell how genuine of a person you are, Scott. And just a few weeks ago when we were in New Jersey hanging out at the snow immersion conference, we hadn't met before that, and it didn't take me long to figure out that you were a pretty straight up honest guy. And I stumbled across a video that's pretty old. I think it's about 10 years old now on YouTube. You and a student of yours named Dave Hunter, the blind snowboarder. Yeah. And your interactions with Dave in that video are terrific, but you alluded to how that experience with him changed you had to alter your teaching style to work with him because he was blind. Yeah. But I wondered, when I was watching that, like moving forward from that experience with him, and you taught him snowboarding and skateboarding, or worked with him. He had a little skill in both coming to you, but like, how did that experience change you as a teacher moving forward?
Oh yeah, I grew a lot as a teacher through my time and experience with Dave. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you a funny story about how Dave and I actually connected, and this is how our relationship started. And we rode a lot. We rode for many, many years, and unfortunately, Dave's not with us anymore. But we rode a lot, and we had some amazing times together. And like you said, the growth for me personally as a human and also as a teacher has been amazing, and I owe a lot to Dave for that. But he called me. He got my number. I'm not even sure exactly how he got my phone number, but he introduced himself, and he said he wanted to learn to snowboard, and I said, "Oh yeah, I can teach you how to snowboard." And we probably talked for 10 minutes before he mentioned he was blind. And then he said, and I'm blind and they won't let me snowboard. They said I have to ski. And right away I was like, well, that's BS. Well, if you want to snowboard, we'll get you to snowboard. Like, we'll figure it out. And I told him, I said, if you're willing to work with me, I'm willing to work with you. I've never taught a blind snowboarder before. I've never even thought about how to do it. But if you're willing to work with me, we can figure it out. And it was, that was our phone call. And then we started on the snow and figured a few things out. And it was like a partnership, to figure out. There were certain things we went through, and he was like, no, I don't like that. And we're like, sweet, we don't have to do that. Or, oh, this works really good for me. And we'd figure out what we were working. And as our relationship and the trust grew, and as our skill grew, we went back to the things that we didn't like, and they started to work more, and just tried to keep that. He was just, to me, he was just a great guy and another student, and when you have somebody in front of you that is a great person that wants to learn, you figure out how to do it. And that's what we did. And that's funny that you brought that up, because I haven't heard that in a while. I haven't heard or talked about Dave in a while. So that thank you for bringing that up. That's really cool. Anybody who's listening and wants to see that video, the clip on YouTube is called "Believing Isn't Always Seeing," or you can just search for Scott Anfang AASI and scroll a little bit and find it. But it's definitely worth a watch, because it's about 10 minutes long, but you can just absolutely tell from watching that Scott's the real deal, and Dave was the real deal. And it was really nice to see. Yeah. We actually we'll get some big hits on it now, Angelo. After that. You'll get about 2 million hits on it now. Yeah, because our one listener is going to watch. Our one listener will do it 2 million times. We actually got that project was through PSIA There was a time when there was a Go with the Pro series. It was a part of that series, and we got invited to an adventure film festival, and got to speak and play that movie, that clip at it in Boulder, which was a really fun, pretty awesome thing, and exposure for snowboarding, and for people that want to get out there. If it's something you want to do, you can figure it out, man.
Well, that's the whole philosophy, Angelo. Even with teaching Dave to ride and working with Dave on that. I mean, that's been your thing the whole time. Figure it out, and there's more to. And I do want to ask this because it's cool. We've kind of I've joked a little bit about it. It's like, hey, you went to Steamboat, and you're like, how'd you figure that out? And you're like, well, I did the milk net, which I know you did. But you definitely, I think, behind the scenes, put plans together. I mean, like you talked about when you went to New Zealand. I want to figure out, how do I make more money doing this? How do I get to that level? I can have a training thing so I can have the mixture. I'm not just in the trenches all day. I mean, everywhere you went, It was kind of like, you were definitely not worried about obstacles. But then when you got there, you said, all right, now what can I do to make these things work? There was definitely some plans. I think you probably put some good thought into.
Oh yeah. Like it's, I don't know. It's, you try to enjoy life and do what you want to do and live in the moment, but you're also like, I'm always like, well, what's next? Where do we go from here? And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because you're never settled. You're always like, oh, what do we do now? What do we do now? Because it's always like, where do we take it from here? So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's definitely been a fun journey.
Yeah. And I know I've heard, I read or heard it somewhere when you were talking about after you didn't make the team the first time and you went back to work on stuff. You didn't go back and like say, I got to train. You went back and said, I got to get out there and work with people. You were out there doing the job, like teaching snowboarding. And that was your training. You talked a lot about that or wrote about that, didn't you?
Yeah. And it was, I think what I learned, through I could say this probably pretty much through all the tryouts, the successful ones, the unsuccessful ones, the ones where I was a participant, the one where I was the selector as the coach. Through all of those, I've seen there's a level of knowledge that is like a baseline. You got to understand the textbook stuff, but there's just the people. I feel like the people that are rising and getting on the team and in the tryouts, and I can speak for the snowboard more than the alpine because I've been on both sides of it all the way through. But that's a piece of it, but it's not an exam. It's not a pass fail thing. It's a selection. And in that selection, it's knowing the information, but then having stories and having experience and being able to connect the model to a student that you had in the past, or to an experience you had in your own free riding where you were afraid and you tried something, and being vulnerable enough to tell that story and share it and learn. And like, I feel like that's a very important part to anybody potentially trying out. It's not an exam. It's not pass fail. And the answer is not in a book. The answer is what you shape and what you make out of your experience and your knowledge. That would be my advice to anybody that's thinking that, hey, I want to try out for the team. Now, teams changed a bit, that it was, there was a lot more independent and travel and clinic. And now there's a lot more computer time and a lot more face time and a lot more spreadsheet time, which opens up a whole nother caliber of person that would be an awesome team member. When I first started the team, my first team, it was like, oh, you have a laptop? Oh, I should get one of those. Now you can't even like it's just part of your laptop is just as important as your snowboard as a team member.
And this will be the first,
for good or bad.
Yeah, right.
So
there you go.
this will be the first interski coming up in quite a while that you won't be an active team member. Do you plan on going to Levi in Finland?
I would love to go. I don't know if I'm going to go, to be honest.
Okay.
And it's not a like that I don't want to go. It's just we'll see what's on the calendar and what the schedule brings at that time.
Yeah. Well, you're on a little different path now. And that's kind of the next question.
If the opportunity is there, I definitely will go, but it's one of those.
So is there, and you mentioned the Mint tours, and I wanted to ask you about something else, that if you still got it going. I know you started before COVID. Is it Go Snow? I think is what it's called.
Yes.
And is that still active, and you working with that? Is that one of your projects?
Unfortunately, it's not active right now. It got put on the back burner. We had a lot of success stories with it, but for whatever reason, the industry just wasn't ready to go on. I think there was a timing issue, and I thought it was going to work in our favor, unplanned, because our whole thing was touchless point of sale. Don't go inside, do it from the hill, da 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 da. And when COVID hit, I was like, oh my God, this is everything we've been saying. We already built something that does all this. And I think at the time when we were trying to get involved with resorts, they were more focused on staying open than being innovative. And a lot of resorts aren't the most innovative in general. Like, this system works, we're going to do it. So it was hard. And the decision seemed to be, if we get this, is it going to help us stay open? Or is it a convenience? And if it was something that was going to keep them open, that's where their energies were. And ours was more of a convenience for the guest to get involved and connect with other snowboarders and connect with skiers and potentially book a lesson. That was our goal, to make it easier for the guests to participate and get them in the ski school doors. And the ski school was just, I feel like a lot of them were just worried about keeping their doors open at the time. So we actually put Go Snow on the back burner, and if the time is right and the opportunity is there, I'm sure we'll bring it back out and make something happen of it. But for right now, we just kind of set that one aside.
Yeah. Well, hey, this has been awesome. I hope in the future we can get you back, because I just know, Angelo, there's going to be something he's doing in the future. It's just the way Scott is, that we know probably 2 years from now, a year from now, 6 months from now, we're going to be going, Scott didn't tell us he was going to be doing that. And then we'd chat with him. He's like, well, I didn't know either. What do you got, Angelo?
No, I'd love to come back, man.
Yeah, definitely. I only have one question. It's a New Zealand question. Any Lord of the Rings stories?
There was a lot of Lord of the Ring. Like, we went to a lot of the sites and the different places that they were. But I'll tell you something else. Like, Lord of the Rings connects to the movies and all this. I did do a Visa commercial down there. We were filming a Visa commercial, and I tried out, sent in some videos, had to get an agent, and we did I ended up, thank God, they needed, I don't know why they needed this, but they needed a body double for Mark McMorrison. And they originally said they wanted me to do it. And then they were like, oh, we just need some simple shots. We need to hit that like 100-foot jump over there and this and that. And I was like, whoa. Like, in the end, I ended up in the commercial as his coach. It was a different guy that was the athlete, but that was a pretty fun experience. There's a lot of different movies and filming and commercials and things like that happen, that are done down there, that it's pretty easy to get involved with, in terms of either a double or somebody in the audience for certain things. But it's cool. I actually got an email the other day. They were looking for, it was from that agent in New Zealand. They were like, oh, you'd fit the model for this motorcycle ad. Do you ride motorcycles? I was like, I'm not there anymore.
Oh man! See, I tell you, Angelo, the stories can go on, and we'll have in a couple months, we'd have some crazy. I mean, as his winter goes on, because he's like, well, we got to see what the schedule is. I know there's a month from now, 2 months from now, we could be talking to him after. He didn't go to Levy and go to Interski, but I guarantee there'll be some really cool stuff that he's been doing all winter.
Well,
I hope so. I'm sure there will be.
Hoping to maybe run into you at National Academy, Scott.
Yeah. You're heading out?
Yeah.
You going to be there?
Yeah, I'll be there. Look for you.
Perfect.
He'll be there.
I'll keep an eye. Oh, yeah. Love to make that happen.
Right on.
Maybe you should bring your snowboard, Angelo.
Maybe I will, Dave.
There you go.
Yeah.
Make him get out there and get video. I want to see some video of him doing some crazy stuff on a snowboard.
You'll see some video, bro. Don't you worry.
I meant you, Angelo. I know Scott can do it. I want to see you.
I'm a step ahead of you. I hear you.
Dude, you are more than one step ahead of me on the snowboard.
I'm half a step.
The first step is you have a snowboard.
Wish I had that avalanche kick from 1988.
Oh, yeah. I don't have mine either, man. Every once in a while, I'll see one on a wall somewhere and I'll be like, oh, I wonder where mine ended up.
Yeah, I have no idea.
You know what I did see the other day, Angelo? Since we were prepping for this call, there was a couple exchanges on Messenger. One of your memories popped up on my Facebook feed. It made me laugh and chuckle. It was you. I'm assuming it's the ramp that's in your backyard.
Oh, yeah.
Jumping into it on your snowboard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw that too. I did see that. Yeah.
We were like 3/4 of a bottle of wine in, and we looked out the window, and all of a sudden there's like 10 inches of snow on the ramp, and the snowboard's hanging there in the kitchen. And I'm like, I'm dropping in. and yeah, that was nice. That was pretty funny. Hey, give me 4 seconds to grab something off the wall to see if you recognize this. Ready?
There he goes. He loves the skateboard stuff. He is a skateboard. He wants to be 12 again to skateboard, to have that body when he was 12. Keeps beating himself up now.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. He had someone that was working with him some rehab a year and a half ago, and was like, he had to stop skateboarding for like 6 months. He wasn't happy.
You were talking about wondering where that avalanche kick is, and I don't know where mine is either.
Yeah.
My uncle lives presently in a house I grew up in when I was a kid, and he was rummaging around in the attic and came across this deck. You recognize that old?
Oh yeah,
that old Neil Blender coffee. Look how
Neil Blender.
Yeah,
the GNS.
Yeah, look at that. Classic. Wish I had that kick. If I had that kick, I'd hang it right next to this Neil Blender deck.
That's a great board.
Yeah, right on. I might have that tattoo also.
Oh, do you have that? You're going to get that tattoo?
It's right there.
Very cool.
Oh, I got to love my buddy Angelo.
Pretty formative years.
There you go, man. Well, Scott, thanks so much for taking the time on your vacation down in Mexico to chat with us. We really do appreciate your time. And I know a lot of the folks out there, listeners, and definitely some of the snowboard folks that have been asking us to have some snowboard folks on, will be happy that you came on. And thanks for all your time you've given to the team and the organization over the years. I know it had to be a lot over all those terms, and definitely part of the crew. And it's nice to hear that it's great to have you at the adult table, as you put it.
I get to be at the adult table now. Sometimes I want to sneak back to the kids' table, though.
Yeah. Well, Angela and I would tell you, we're always wondering. We figure, we're always at the kids' table, anyways, in our world.
We got sent to the kids' table after this podcast started.
Oh man! Oh, hey everybody! Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this one. This is the Fall Line with Chaos and Company.